is a term that was coined about, I would probably say about 8 years ago, 9 years ago, of properties valued in excess of £10 million or $13 million globally. Okay. So essentially, they're the most expensive properties on the planet. And for many years, probably the past, I'd say circa 8, I've been fully focused in that price region, predominantly in London and overseas. So I nicknamed myself Mr. Superprime, hashtag Mr. Superprime, as part of my social media, I don't know what you would call it, but exploration. And that should give you a good understanding as to why I did it and where I've come from. If I take us all the way back, Superprime was predominantly SW postcode, so Knightsbridge, Chelsea, Belgravia, where Paul's done a huge amount of business, Mayfair, and now it's spread out a little bit to Marylebone, Notting Hill, Kensington, which is a little bit more of established neighbourhood, and it's widening. Okay, it's absolutely widening. Now, the question we really need to ask ourselves is, why is it widening? And that's partially driven or predominantly driven by the profile of the buyers who want to buy real estate. And the profile of buyers have changed. Okay. It was the traditional jet set that was buying real estate in Belgravia because it was their natural environment, it's where they wanted to be. But a lot of I mentioned about 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago that I felt that the centre of London in terms of super prime homes was moving slightly further north. And recently, about 3 months ago, there was a stat to say that the average sale price in Westminster has, for the first time, superseded Kensington and Chelsea. And I think that's driven by the assets that you can buy, the kind of properties you can buy, and the profile of the buyers and what their wants and needs look like. So I think it's changed, and you are seeing more people buying slightly further north, in Marylebone and neighbourhoods like Notting Hill that have performed really well over the past 5 years, which haven't been the easiest. But then if you start looking at in excess of £50 million or £40 million, you'll see that the trades then fall back into Mayfair and into Belgravia a little bit more.
But I also see areas like Notting Hill coming into the super prime sort of market for domestic buyers rather than maybe international buyers. And I mean, last year in Holland Park, Notting Hill, we probably financed about 10 houses over 30 million. Virtually every house, I'm not just saying this, that sold high value house we were involved in Notting Hill, because we know the sort of clients who are active in that market. And it's sometimes a bit of discretion that people are looking for rather than something that screams at you, which may be in traditional Mayfair or Kensington, Knightsbridge sort of house. So I think there is definitely a change in dynamic. There's more domestic buyers. There is a lot of money coming from different sectors.
Some of the big villas on Regent's Park are pretty spectacular. I would say house that I sold to a gentleman not long ago for £95 million is pretty super prime. Your neighbour to the Queen, that's not a bad one. Then you get some ginormous houses in near Poole in North London. I mean, I've got a client of mine who's building a 42,000 square foot house. But then again, a penthouse at One Hyde Park is absolutely spectacular. I've been into a couple of them and they really are incredible. So bit of diversity there, but
I think the best product for me is something that ticks every box.
Every box.
And those boxes for me are land, which is totally rare in central London, in any capital city. Is land, its scale, usability of the space, that you haven't just got space for the sake of it. My favourite would be a similar size to 40,000 square foot house in prime central London with a 3-acre garden, including a lake you can swim in, indoor swimming pool, better than any 5-star hotel, and space that's very livable. Outside space is important. Proximity to amenities is important. Security is very important. The neighbourhood.
I've seen the house that my partner at the time sold the house that I sort of semi fell in love with.
Yeah.
And we sold it to a very famous musician, and it's in Little Venice, which is where I live, close to in between St John's Wood and Notting Hill, and it was a 4,500 square foot house with an off-street parking space at the front, a 200-foot garden at the rear, and then it backed onto communal gardens. And I have to tell you that I walked in there and I nearly burst, because I thought to myself, wow, this is ideal for me. I couldn't do the 30,000 square feet. I think I'd
Yeah, no, not good.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
this
for
was
me,
just
5 or 6 is the most you really need.
yeah. I'd stick probably a basement in there. So if we ever had lockdown again, which is probably going to happen, we wouldn't have to leave. But that was my favorite.
In terms of super prime, what I would go for in the new build today is the Almancantar block on Marble Arch near this mansion block, actually, the round block that soars above Hyde Park facing west. I think views are very important. That faces west over Hyde Park. If you look at the sunsets there, I'm a big fan of sunsets. It's actually quite incredible there, the views over West London.
I sold a penthouse about a year ago to an ultra high net worth from North America, and the requirement I got, it was a referral. The requirement I got was we need outside space and views of a park. And I scoured the market, and in the end, we made a commitment on an apartment for over £30 million blind. He exchanged contracts before actually seeing it in person on my say so, and the main requisite was built around the scarcity of finding one, a penthouse, two, one with sufficient outside space to entertain not just his family but other people, and exceptional views. Now, if you have that, you've got insane amount of scarcity value, and that's why we bought it.
I think the bit, historical houses that have substance, some of the big ambassadorial houses in Belgravia are astonishing. One that we were involved in recently had the most amazing views, even though it was in central Belgravia. Just everywhere you looked, it was like a wow, which I think you want to get as many wows as you can.
I also feel that the idea of living in a home that looks beautiful, but you can't live in it. Yeah. So furniture that is just awkward, it looks beautiful, but it's awkward. It's not how the ultra high net worth lives anymore. It's a younger dynamic. It's kids running around and jumping on people, and sofas in cinema rooms as opposed to bucket chairs. And I think having functionality now, in like Paul mentioned it before, great functionality is worth a hell of a lot. Yeah. And now we're going to go into air quality. We're going to go into, all these elements that create a healthier lifestyle is going to have to be incorporated. I remember doing a piece for my previous business, and they asked me, how important. They asked a number of people how important. What was the question? Not lifestyle, but air quality and what's the word?
Purity.
Sustainability was how important was sustainability. Yeah. And I said it's going to be really important. People are going to be very conscious about how they spend their time in their homes and the air qualities and stuff like that.
But also what a home's going to look like in 10 years' time. A lot of, especially with lighting systems and hi-fi systems, it's been a lot rationalized now. A home that was done 10 years ago can look terribly dated now, especially if it's all got traditional wiring rather than Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, all that sort of stuff. So you don't want to over-invest because things move on.
You really do need to take the right advice.